get started just from our interest of time. Um, Good morning, Commissioner Piscotti. So let me begin by introducing everybody who's on the call today. I'm here as the mayor's designee, as is sitting for being chair on the committee. Maybe we can go around the horn here. Dr. Richards at UNM, good morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Thank you for being here. Commissioner Piscotti is on the line. Commissioner, thank you for being here.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. And then the new owner of a new publication in our town, Councilor Davis, how are you? President?
I mean, maybe new owner of a very old publication, but
well, hey,
almost as old as you and I are, Lauren.
yes, indeed. That's our alibi. Anyway, and then I believe sitting in for the county manager, Julie Morges-Baca, is Enrico. Enrico, how are you?
I'm well. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good to see you, my friend.
Pleased to be here.
Yeah, hey, that hair is getting a little bit white. What's the story, dude?
Oh, I had it frosted.
Yeah, very nicely done. I like that. And then, of course, President Stokes, thank you for being here on behalf of the university.
Good morning.
And in our office here, we have a cast of folks here that are going to be part of our meeting today. You all know our Director of Family and Community Services here, Ms. Carol Pierce. And David Parkinson is our aide here, Sonado on Google or on Zoom. And Deb Zahn is in the back here helping us with our minutes. But with that being said, we'll assume that Councilor Benton and Commissioner O'Malley will join us at some point. So we wanted to get started in the interest of everyone's time. Here we go. And then we do have additional folks who are online. Some of our neighborhood association members, some members of the media, and others. So I don't know, they don't have access to have a conversation, but just so that everyone knows on the coordinating council that we have other committee members listening to the conversation as we move forward. So, okay. So with that being said, can we just then move to, I don't think that there are other designees aside from Enrico and I on behalf of our respective bosses on the call. So we'll move on to approval of the minutes of August the 18th. Have all of you had a chance to review those minutes? And if so, we need a motion for approval.
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved by Councilor Davis and second by President Stokes. All those in favor of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, we have, as normally, we have our agenda that you all have looked at. We have several items to, mostly from a discussion standpoint, but the one important item that we thought we should move to the top of the agenda is this conversation that we've had for for the last two meetings, and that is that in our MOU with all of our respective governments, that we were going to try and develop a framework as part of our mission here for the next 60 days. And so what we took a stab at from a staff perspective is putting together a framework, a draft that we'd like to share with you so that you can get a sense of what we're looking at and what we're trying to get done. And then and I'll have Carol describe what this is and go into a little more detail, and then obviously open it up for discussion. I see that Julie Baca joined us. So is my assumption, Julie or Enrico, that Enrico's in for Commissioner O'Malley, or is that correct?
I don't think.
Yes, so good morning, everybody. Good morning, Lawrence. So I had asked Enrico if he would be my designee if I could not make it to a meeting, or if Commissioner O'Malley couldn't. Is that okay with everybody?
Sure. Okay, so in this particular case, then Enrico will be in for Commissioner O'Malley. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, just
Thank
so
you.
everybody knows who's who. All right, great. All right, well, now let's move on to the first discussion item, which is the draft outline of a coordinated community framework.
Yes.
And Carol?
Thank you, everyone. Homeless Coordinating Council members. The outline that's in your packet, and I think our assistant, David, is going to pull it up on the screen so everyone can see it. And this was sent out in the package for review. So in this draft, as he's pulling that up, I put the language from the Homeless Coordinating Council MOU in there just to remind us this is what we're aiming for. And it's just that within the 60 days that we would have an outline for that coordinated framework of services and housing that advance the solutions to the challenge. And obvious challenge is people without homes in our community. And we're really trying to make a difference there. I did include the timeline. So we really officially kicked off August 4th, and that was after the MOU between all the organizations were signed, and that began the 60 days. And then all of the committees, which we'll hear from today, have been meeting. And so the proposed outline that I am recommending, that we're recommending, is that we have an overview of just to frame the discussion on the challenge, if you will. How many people with homelessness, what are our needs out there, just to set the context. I think then we really get into the meat of it, and there's really two sections I'm proposing. One is the services, and what feeds into that is the work of the Homeless Service System Committee, that's a mouthful, and also from our Coordinated Street Outreach Committee, as well as the Gateway Facilities Committee. So all those pieces provide input or the ingredients to do two things. What are the needs and gaps? And what are those high impact strategies? And then for housing, because I think we've all agreed that the solution lies in what are the services, and that's a very big term, but many pieces feed into services, and then housing. It's all part of the equation. So on the housing piece are two committees. One is the Youth Housing Continuum, and the other is the Housing Committee. Youth Housing Continuum Committee and the Housing Committee would also follow that same framework. What are the needs and gaps, and what are the high impact strategies to address needs and gaps? So that's that coordinated community-wide framework, and I think we were trying to be very deliberate on the language of high impact strategies. So this will have as much detail around that, but we've really got to name what those strategies are as we move forward, and then that will be our roadmap. I realize I'm very visual. I'm painting the framework with my arms here, but I will pause and see if there's any questions about this proposed framework. And I think some of the committees, if you will, have begun using this as they create the agenda, because as we have the committee discussions, this is all what they're driving for, to identify those needs and gaps and the high impact strategy. I'll pause.
Okay. With that, any thoughts? This is really an important piece of conversation to be had so that we can make sure that everyone on the committee feels like we've set this up correctly, and if there's some pieces or some information that we need to include, this would be a good time for us to have that conversation. Madam President, did you have something?
No, I'm just thinking through the different sections and trying to determine if I think there's anything missing, but nothing comes immediately to mind.
Okay. Okay.
But I see Mark Child just put something in chat. Oh.
Yeah, there's several chat pieces of Madam President, let me ask you this though. When we looked at the issue of youth and youth housing issues as it relates to the university, and I know that many of them are already adults, but a lot of folks in that university area, are concerned about just the number of youth that are living in our streets, etc. Are you seeing anything else in there that we might need to add as it relates to that? And that's just a pretty broad question, but just a perspective.
Well, there is a lot of concern about the number of youth, and especially we have homeless students. Not all of them are necessarily living on the street, but some of them may be. But I think the group that we have working on this is going to be able to, they're going to focus exclusively, I think, on that particular population, some of which might be UNM and some which I'm sure are not. They're just within that younger age group that we recognize may have somewhat different needs than the group of older adults that are homeless.
Right. Well, that's helpful. I appreciate that. Any other thoughts from any of the other committee members as it relates to this? Julie or Councilor Davis, any thoughts about any gaps here in this outline?
Lawrence, for what it's worth, I think this is great. I know we've been listening to staff work through this a little bit. I think this is a great time. The timeline's aggressive, but I think this is a good framework, and I know we have the right folks. So I'm ready to get started, and I think we'll identify some other things in here as we move forward, but certainly this gets us started, and I think that's great. So thanks.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Lawrence, I probably would want to add that, in the chat, the question about whether we would talk about a future research agenda. And I think that there would be a lot of interest at UNM in promoting research into these various areas, so that in the long run, we really are not only helping solve the problem for Albuquerque, but really contributing to what is truly a national issue. Although the circumstances in Albuquerque we know are different than what exists in other cities.
Okay, I think that's actually worth having that conversation. Look, as we move to this system and develop this framework and move to making some decisions about how we provide services, I think the one thing that's going to be continuing to be a long-term conversation is just what our economic situation across the country, across Albuquerque and New Mexico, how that is going to impact people just as on the whole, and more importantly, how that might change, our homeless community population and their needs. And that really would be a great place for the university, I think, to really offer a long-term sort of evaluation of our community and assessment in terms of what we're doing and maybe where we need to change some of our approaches. So that would be a great service from the university. So we'll maybe follow up with you, Madam President, and see if we can set up some research piece to this.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like Commissioner Piscotti got bumped off.
Yeah, let's see. We're having a little bit of a challenge here with our technology. We've lost Commissioner Piscotti, and Councilor Benton seems to can't get on the call.
Just resend his link.
Okay, we resent his link, so apologize. Even as good as we think we are, we're not quite that good.
Yeah. So Lawrence, maybe as a moment of clarification, I want to acknowledge a comment in the chat box, because I think and thank you for welcoming members of the community that have logged in to hear the discussion. And the question was asked because community members believe that they would have the chance to weigh in on these meetings. And I think the way we've structured it is those neighborhoods or other people are part of the committees, and that's where the discussion occurs. But I think we might want to clarify that with our time frame, we welcome members of the public to weigh in, to view in, but that this meeting we're not including on the agenda open conversation.
Right, so that is accurate. Again, members of the community that want to engage in the process, certainly all our committee meetings are open. We follow the open meetings requirements to get them all out there to the community, and we'll create opportunities for the community to be involved in all of the respective committees that we have, 5 of the committees, to get involved. The process here at this council has been that we leave it at the discussion of the elected and appointed officials just to talk about what the committee work has been done, and the real conversations about the details happen at the committee levels. So
This is Commissioner Piscopo.
okay, Commissioner Piscotti is now on a phone call, so that's great. So let me ask, did Dr. Richards have a comment on chat that I didn't see related to the framework? Doctor, I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to see that.
No, I support the framework, and the only other thing that I was going to ask about potentially is whether or not there's a support group for the various committees for things like data and analytics and communications. I don't think that they necessarily need separate work groups, but just kind of wondering if that has been given some consideration, and if that's anything that we need to think about resourcing.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Thank you, Mike, Dr. Richards. I think that's a great point. And while I've just known Mike a long time, a lot of the committees will really require data. I think that's an excellent point, because right now where that lives is every committee is trying to get what we've called core documents together from the county, from the city, from UNM. And in those core documents, there are some data elements for sure. But I think you raise an excellent point, and I don't know that we've given any consideration for that and where that staffing would come from, but I think it's an excellent point.
Yeah, and maybe on that note, maybe again, because of so many of our community members listening to what we're doing, and I suspect as we continue to progress with this council, that we'll have more interest from the community. It might be worthwhile at our next meeting to have our staff share the data and information that we have as it relates to the state of our homeless population, just in terms of demographics, in terms of numbers, in terms of what part of the city and what demographics we have, just to sort of give everyone a sense of what we're looking at as a piece of the agenda. Anybody have any thoughts or concerns about that? Just want to make sure. I think it'll be helpful for everybody to be on the same page. Okay, well, good.
May I go back and ask?
Sure.
Mike, I'm wondering, and because it kind of builds off of President Stokes' comment, might the university have a suggestion on somebody or a group that has really the data, or could be a help in that regard? I mean, not to say this, the county doesn't and the city doesn't, because we might, but I think that's definitely in the university world. So not to put you on the spot, but maybe that's something we could think about, where the bandwidth might come from the university.
I was thinking about that. I don't have an immediate answer, but I would like to go back and think about what we might be able to offer there.
Okay. That's great. Okay, well, be thinking about this framework. If you have some additional ideas or thoughts about how we put this together, or if we need, or if there are some gaps in the framework that we need to be put on this, please let us know. Carol Pierce and her staff put this together, and I think it gives us at least a straw man, if you will, for beginning to move forward with the framework. So with that being said, then we'll move on to our next portion of our agenda, which is report outs from the different committees. We'll start with item A, which is our housing committee, and our co-chairs here is, I think Lisa is here, so we'll ask Lisa to step up to the table, and she can introduce her other colleagues and give us a status report on the work that they've done over the last week.
All right. I know we have Mark Child on the call, and then it's Betty Valdez is the other co-chair.
So David's looking to let them in. Just a moment. There's Mark. Good job. Yep.
All right. So just a quick update. Our first meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 9th. We will meet every other Wednesday from 1 to 3. originally or initially, and then we'll go from 1 to 2 p.m. We are fortunate, we were just talking about data, we are fortunate that we did commission the Urban Institute to do affordable housing analysis for us earlier this year, looking at gaps around affordable rental housing for very low income households, and also offering some recommendations based on interviews and analysis of the data on how we can better increase and protect the supply of affordable housing for very low income renters. So we'll really be using our first 3 committee meetings as strategic planning sessions to identify very concrete strategies that we want to work on collectively to increase and protect the supply of affordable rental housing for very low income folks based on what's in that Urban Institute report. And we've hired John Ross, the local consultant, to help us facilitate those meetings. So we are very much looking forward to getting started. Ms. Mark, is there anything you want to add to that?
Wait.
You may be on mute. We saw your lips moving, but we couldn't hear you.
No, and it doesn't look like he's.
I just said thank you.
Oh.
Very good, very good. Any other, Lisa, so then you all have not formally started your meetings then, is that?
That is correct.
Correct.
Yes. Our first meeting will be on September 9th.
All right, so September 9th is just so that other members know, they'll start doing their work. This is a really important committee because I do think that this study that they commissioned really is going to be very helpful and has a great, a lot of information that I think will be useful as we move forward with our housing portion of our conversations here. I just see where Councillor Benton just joined us. Welcome, Councillor. We can't hear you either, Councillor.
Am I here in time for the meeting to adjourn?
Yeah.
No, you're in good shape. You're in good shape, sir. We are just now in the discussion items from the different committees, and we just did the housing committee, and now we're going to move over into the homeless services committee.
Lawrence, can I add one thing
Sure.
on the housing committee? I just wanted to say for these first 3 meetings, these strategic planning sessions, of course, homeless coordinating council members are welcome to join us. Councillor Benton and Commissioner O'Malley have let me know that they would like to be part of those strategic planning sessions. If anyone else would like to join us, please let me know and I'll make sure to get the information to you. Thank you.
Could you remind me what times you said you'd be meeting?
Our first 3 meetings, these strategic planning sessions, will be Wednesday. It's starting on September the 9th. They'll be every other Wednesday from 1 to 3. And then after we get through our first 3 strategic planning sessions, the meetings will only be an hour. They'll be from 1 to 2 every other Wednesday.
Okay. Very good. And before I get too far down the road, I want to just make sure I reiterate the point I made earlier. As a result of our legal review from both, I think, city and county attorneys, all of our committees are also going to be following the Open Meetings Act requirements of the publications of notices so that committee members and others can join any of those committees. So this is, our goal is to try and make this as open a process as possible and give everyone notification of the work that all these committees are doing. So that's in part why, in particular, this first committee, the housing committee, had a week or 2 delay because of the requirements of the open meetings to get the word out. So just wanted to make sure that you all knew the constraints that this timeline that we have is super aggressive, which is just basically means that we have to have these meetings and it's a notification every week because of the number of committees that we have. So we had a little hiccup at the beginning, but I think we're now in a good place to continue to do that moving forward.
May I also, thank you, Lawrence, acknowledge one other hiccup, and Councillor Benton, I apologize, you're on now. We're glad you're on now. But what we're going to do as a practice moving forward is to make sure every homeless coordinating council member gets an email the Monday before these, so you've got that link right there, because these are individual links that you all get, and I think we've got a lot of links going out. So we will just establish that as a practice to make it a little easier so it's front and center on the email. And I apologize for any confusion that occurred today.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the Homeless Services Committee. And here from our staff is Quinn Danae, and she'll introduce the members of her committee and give us a report out.
Sure thing. Okay, on the line we have Commissioner Piscotti and also Rodney McNeese from UNS.
Give him a minute to let him in.
Commissioner.
Yeah, on the phone. Where's Rodney now? Rodney, are you on there?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, yay.
Well, all right. So our first meeting for the Homeless Services Council will be, I'm sorry, the Homeless Services System Committee will be on Tuesday, the 8th, also a week from today. And I believe that Rodney was going to do a little bit more of the updating. There's not much more to say, but maybe he has more to say.
So thanks, Quinn. Good morning, everyone. As Quinn indicated, we are having our first meeting next week. We have had a better conversation with Commissioner and Quinn and I just on kind of the structure and the agenda. And I think we've pulled that together. We do have, I think, a fairly robust group of community participation, people at least that were invited to the discussion on Tuesday. And so I would anticipate that there would be a significant amount of opportunity for folks to provide input as the kind of the starting point of that process. And then we would kind of go through the agenda from there. So of course, anybody's welcome to join us, but we probably will know a lot more after we kind of get that kicked off on Tuesday. Thank you.
Commissioner Piscotti, would you like to add any thoughts to that?
We have to unmute.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, there she is.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you now, Commissioner.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, I just wanted to add that we also had just a little hiccup with the Open Meetings Act rule, the 72-hour rule. And so, you know, I think the kind of the point behind that, and you've talked about this, is that it's really important for us to let the public know what's going on, have a chance to, you know, listen in, participate. And like Rodney said, we're still having some discussions about how to make our meetings the most productive. We have several neighborhood associations as well as service providers. So, you know, I just want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard in all of this, especially, you know, people who are living in the neighborhoods, who are doing the work, you know, boots on the ground. I think our top priority is really getting like all that really good input so that we can make the best decisions and give the best reports to the HCC. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
If I may, and thank you, Commissioner Piscotti. I was reminded as we've got all the documents posted on the city website, I believe the county too has posted that just to make sure the public is aware of the 72 hours and just that we're following the Open Meetings Act. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, well, yeah, like I said, the hiccup with a couple of these committees was that issue. So fortunately, we're getting ourselves now coordinated in a way that these committees can actually start doing some work. And with that said, let me then move on to the Street Outreach Coordinated Committee, and that is co-chaired by Xochitl Campos Biggs and others. And I'll have her introduce her team and give a report out.
Thank you, Lawrence.
And let's get Commissioner Colley on.
See, we're working on getting Commissioner Colley on, so I'll wait until he's on to introduce.
Down here, sure, just a moment.
Great, good job.
Good morning, Commissioner Colley. So my co-chairs, Commissioner Colley with the county and Dr. Denise Lynn with UNM Psychiatry. We had our first meeting last Thursday, August the 27th, on with many of our street outreach providers. I do know that Commissioner Colley was going to do the majority of the reporting, but I will make a. Oh no! Oh no! Sorry.
Really?
Yeah.
No,
No.
did I not get that memo?
Oh no! Well, I'm happy to get started, and then and then you can fill me in too if I missed anything.
I'm happy for you to get started, and I'll be glad.
All right, perfect. I'm sorry, I must have misread an email. Apologies for that.
And you could pull up your
I'll
mouse,
step
I
back
think
a little
if
bit
you-
so that I can put my eyes on.
And let's just move this. Is this it?
No?
She's coming through fine.
Oh, okay. So, in our first meeting with the street outreach providers, we really dug into what the mission of the next 2 months is going to be, which is to identify the needs, the gaps, and the strategies, the needs and the gaps that exist, and to come up with high-level strategies on how to overcome them. We really wanted to pay close attention and be really emphatic about the fact that, this group has worked together for so long. There's so much success that has already come out of the work that they've done and the strategies that they've created. One thing that we did do in the meeting is just really try to encourage bigger thinking and how to address problems that maybe have seemed too big in the past, and how to really using that miracle question, if things could be better tomorrow, what does that look like, and how do we get us there? So I, for one, really appreciated the comments that came from our group, just as far as identifying what those gaps are. One of which was services for people with extreme high acuity needs, connection to subpopulations that are harder to reach, like young people and people who are undocumented. How do we reach those individuals so that we can make sure that they're getting the services that they need, as well as families. Families was a big one that came up. We also discussed reaching out to members of the community who provide similar services, but who are not at the table as well. And that includes some members of the faith-based communities that serve people experiencing homelessness in different ways. Just really understanding that, members of this very vulnerable population, they know no boundaries when it comes to where they receive their services. And we just need to make sure that everyone who's providing them is connected and able to communicate so that we can really create the network needed to be effective in our work. So coming up in the future, we'll be working, the co-chairs, myself, Commissioner Colley and Dr. Lynn, we'll be working on kind of reviewing everything that we discussed and coming up with a new agenda for our coming meeting, which is going to be next Thursday, September the 10th from 3:30 to 5 o'clock. In our previous conversations, we talked about keeping the 90-minute meeting until we meet our October deadline, but we'll be moving to a 60-minute meeting as we once we get there. But Commissioner Colley, is there anything that I did not include or that you would like to include?
Well, I would like to emphasize a little bit the difficulty of figuring out who the universe of these outreach teams are. This was an incredibly good group that Sochi is connected with. They've been meeting for a long time. There's a lot of internal support. There's a lot of internal connections, but there are people who are not at the table. And so our problem is to figure out who's not at the table and figure out ways in which to consult with them about where are the gaps and what are the strategies needed to overcome those gaps. For instance, the mobile crisis teams, which are superb outreach program of both the city and the county in terms of getting people on scene with people in crisis with the right skills and the right abilities. Not at this table. YDI is not at this table. Gosh, where's that list? Crossroads, UNM Connections, Youth Court. There's a young adult court out of Metro Court that deal with these kind of folks. And how in the world do we begin to get the catalog of all the folks who have outreach teams out there? And then how do we talk about how we coordinate to provide best services? So we have a lot to do in the next 2 meetings. And we're going to be reaching out to the groups we're aware of, but you know, there are folks out there working this area that we don't know and are not a part of the original group we began to meet with. So part of our problem is to get hold of that horizon that keeps moving out beyond our grasp and to do that and do that well. Thank you, Sochi. You did a much better job than I could have.
Thank you, Commissioner Colley. The one thing that I'll add too is that, you know, one thing that was not mentioned at the meeting, but just kind of goes without saying with this group of providers is just the incredible amount of their trauma-informed care practices, understanding that for so many, homelessness began with a very traumatic incident or incidences. And so I do think that that is one thing that is very special about our group, is that that's just sort of like a unified philosophy as they do their work. But that's about it.
Great. Lawrence, may I just add? I just wanted to add that the minutes, once the committee approves those meeting notes, then those will be posted. But the committee will approve those the next meeting, and then they'll be posted so all members can see that, and members of the public as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sochi, and Commissioner Colley for all the work, and Dr. Let me just say one thing that sort of strikes me as we're hearing these report outs, and I want to just make sure that the council members, if you all want to be, if you will, informed in more detail, Sochi's committee and Commissioner Colley's committee, as Commissioner Colley stated, is really an interesting committee because there is so much of the work that's being done, as he said, by many folks in the community, and trying to get an understanding of all the work that they're doing, and quite frankly, with a lot of success in many areas, and ensuring that the rest of the HCC members know what that's about and understand that. Let us know. We'd be happy to have Sochi or one of our folks go and meet with you all individually, or however you'd like to do that, to learn more about this outreach programs that we have. Because as you all know, the whole idea behind this entire process of the council is to get a systematic, if you will, a systems approach to dealing with our homeless challenges, and this is a really big part of that system. This how we reach out to the community, the homeless community, and provide services. And it's been done. It's been done for many years. Now it's an opportunity for us to coordinate that a little better and see if we're putting the resources where they need to be. So I just offer that to all of you as a point of information and knowledge about what's going on at the street level, if you will, with our homeless population. Councilor Benton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a suggestion, and it's fascinating, you know, the idea that, fascinating but not surprising, the idea that there are people out there who we don't know doing work. And I would just ask the committee to, coming from the place of more on the facilities committee, that we try to gather data not only about the programs, but specific data about geographically how those services are being delivered. So not only programmatically, but geographically, where are they working? Where, you know, what are they seeing out there, you know, in terms of us addressing the problem citywide the way we know we have to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, that's a really good point for sure, as it relates to where they are. Because I get the thought there, Councilor Benton, and that is that as we start looking at facility locations, et cetera, and looking at services, that we're making sure that that the right hand's talking to the left as it relates to how we sort of integrate those services in a way that makes sense. So good point.
Thank you. And then, yeah, just, it ties into with something that I'm always interested in, and that's transportation and how our clients need to get around. So thank you.
Yeah, good point. Commissioner Colley, were you going to say something?
Nope.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions on this committee? Okay, thanks, Such. That was a good report. Now let's move on to the youth housing continuum. And I guess we'll call Quinn back up and she can talk a little bit about that.
All right, thank you, Lawrence.
And we'll try and get all the other co-chairs on now.
Great.
She's not on.
Mr. Rice, not so Natasha and Jennifer.
Nasha and Jennifer, great. Hello, everybody. So the Youth Housing Continuum Committee will have its first meeting tomorrow. We're very excited about it. We're really ready to dive in to find out those true unmet needs and those high impact strategies. The great thing about this group is a lot of the folks on this committee have had a lot of conversations already, and we do have a good idea about what a lot of the gaps are. So we're going to be diving into thinking about how we can work together to come up with some strategies to leverage funding, etc. So I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, to meet some of the needs of the young people. And for this committee, it is talking about those that are 18 to 25, because what we know about that age group is they experience homelessness differently than the adult populations that are chronically homeless. They're often unseen, so they're couch surfing, they're living in cars, they wouldn't necessarily claim the identity of homelessness. And there's also large gaps in data collection around young people experiencing homelessness because, there's a lot of complicated reasons for that, but we don't totally have a grip on the number of young people that are truly on the streets. We know how many people have aged out of foster care that are experiencing homelessness. We know how many people are in juvenile justice that are experiencing homelessness, and coming through programs that youth providers work with folks that are at risk of experiencing homelessness, etc. So we are missing a giant number, and I'm very excited to get into that and find out what some of the true data is, so we can really get closer and closer to helping the young people in need in our community.
Great. You want to answer?
Yeah, Jennifer, would you like to add, or Nasha, would you like to add? I think they have to be unmuted, perhaps. Okay.
Good morning. This is Jennifer Scacco. Thank you, Quinn. I appreciate the mention. No, and just to echo what Quinn said, our meeting is on Wednesday, and I'm excited to dive in further. We've gathered a number of core documents. I think Nasha has provided us some good documents. We'll also be looking at some of the data we have from our county programs around youth homelessness and other programs. So I'm excited to dive into that more and talk more about the strategy of really understanding the population as a whole, and then how we can move forward with big picture strategies to address their needs. Thank you.
Nasha, is there anything that you would like to add?
Well, I can say that Nasha's got a great, great photo because it makes me hungry.
Me too.
And it is appropriate for the time of the year. So maybe she's, I'm not sure she's on. So with that, thanks you all for that report. I also think this is another one, going back to Dr. Richard's question earlier or comment earlier. This is another area where I think some data on demographics and to better understand how acute this issue is and how we might look at services, because I mean, we all seem to think about homeless folks as the adults, and are so many youth in our community that are living in the shadows of even of the homeless folks, of the adult folks, and getting a better understanding and appreciation for the size and the demographics of this population would be really helpful as we move forward. So that would be a good piece of information. Okay, so that goes to our youth committee. Now let me get to the Gateway Facilities Committee, which is I chair that along with Councilor Benton, Commissioner O'Malley, and Tom Neal from the university. And so let me see if any of them, the Commissioner or Tom, are okay.
Looks like it's just you two.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll start, and then I'll let Councilor Benton chime in as he sees fit, if you don't mind, Councilor. So we had our committee meeting on Friday, and had a good conversation just about where we see things today and where we are starting from, a starting point as it relates to the council. So as you'll recall, we had done a pretty extensive review at the city prior to the council being formed, and we had come to the conclusion after having some community input, et cetera, and conversations that the two sites or two areas of the city that were going to be under consideration for potentially putting in some facilities were either going to be the area that encompasses the Coronado Park area, and the other was the Loveless Facility site off of Gibson in the southeast part of town. We talked a little bit about the challenges that we see as it relates to, first and foremost, the area around downtown, around the Wells Park area in particular, with the providers that we have in that area, which is healthcare for the homeless and HopeWorks, and then to the north of I-40, the Rock and Steel Bridge, and what we see as it relates to the homeless work or that we have to do is the corridors of 2nd Street and 3rd Street and other streets in that vicinity, being the corridor of folks walking from one service provider to the next, and using really the park as a place to rest or a place to camp, however you want to describe that, and that impact to the neighborhood and that impact to the community. Obviously, we also see a migration, if you will, to the south of Central to the services that are provided on the south side. So this whole corridor is obviously a corridor that as long as the providers are there and the services that are being provided to the homeless community are located there. We talked a little bit about the fact that some type of a facility in these areas might be a good opportunity for us to do some further review and some further analysis as it relates to the viability of potentially either a facility in the city-owned property there at Coronado, or whether there's other properties that might be concentrated around the First and Mountain Road area next to the providers that are there. This facility, I think we all came to a consensus, is a much smaller facility, that is not, that is really a overnight respite facility, if you will, and utilizing our existing service providers to provide services and using that facility as a way to really to try and provide a evening service, overnight service to our homeless population that seems to wander all around the neighborhoods and or ultimately sometimes ends up at Coronado Park. And so that was the general conversation and our thought about continuing to evaluate vacant properties there that might vacant parcels of land, looking to see if whether or not any of those lands are suited for potentially building a facility. Again, like I said before, a very scaled down facility than what maybe folks might have thought early on in this conversations about facilities. One other piece that we did add to the conversation is the city did acquire the Bischoff building that's there on the corner of the Frontage Road and 4th Street next to Coronado Park. Part of that acquisition was simply that the facility was actually in a good position for us to use as a city to do a couple of things. One is to have a presence, a little more of a presence on a day-to-day basis on that park area and the issues that surround the park as it relates to the homeless community. Part of those groups will include some of the folks that Sochi talked about, which is our outreach coordinating teams, making sure that they're always out in the community talking to folks and overseeing some of hopefully helping the services on the park. Potentially having DMV security there as well, our city security folks to help manage a little bit more about the activities along the park, as many of you know and our community members know. It's you know, some of our most vulnerable population quite happens to be our homeless folks, and a lot of activities that are occurring in that park are not healthy activities, obviously, and activities that we need to curb. And so having a little bit more of a security presence is a way for us to begin to get a better sense of what needs to happen as we move forward with safety in that area. And then I know that Carol and her staff are looking at potentially asking looking at some providers potentially that might be able to locate in that building as well to start doing some real outreach on the park, since a lot of the population seem to be gathered there during the day. So that facility, I think, will help us really set an anchor, if you will, as it relates to just services and oversight. Whether the facility, the Gateway facility, is located there is still up for conversation, but we know now that at least we have at least a anchor on that park to begin to help manage the park on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's good for the city, but it's also an opportunity for us to look at how that building can help with whatever service structure we ultimately come up with for this downtown area. We also, Tom Neal was also very, very helpful in giving us a perspective of the work that he does with the Rock and the services that they provide. So I think that was, and President Stokes, thank you for appointing him. You know, he brings a lot of good insight into the work that he does because of his board membership with that community, and was actually really helpful in understanding how they perceive the issues of feeding the homeless and dealing with the work that they do, which is extraordinary. And so he was very helpful in giving us some insight on that. So thank you. So Councilor Benton, anything else you'd like to add on that conversation?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the thanks for Tom Neal. I think highly of him. You know, he's a guy who knows how to get real estate and property issues dealt with, and also has this role of a compassionate member of the Rocks board. The interesting thing about, I would just call it the downtown corridor, because it's probably 3/4 of a mile or a mile long. That may be underestimating it, Lawrence. You may have a sense, but if you go all the way from Steel Bridge on Iron all the way up to the Rock at Noonday and really beyond, because there are other homeless providers north of there, although they're fairly they have a low impact. But that is a long corridor, and so I'm very interested when we look at that corridor of compressing it all we can and not continue to stretching it out. You know, the changes that occurred when Noonday closed downtown and moved up there, and Steel Bridge moved or purchased property up there and moved some of their work north of I-40 was a substantial change from when it was all just kind of concentrated around the Mountain Road area and then downtown. So again, I keep looking at this more from a land use planning standpoint, both with regard to housing or with regard to gateway facility or with regard to how we deal with services, because we're a big spread out city and the problem is big and spread out, but there's a historic impact in this area. I consider it to be an issue of equity. The neighborhoods affected are those who are closest to the railroad tracks and who happen to also be the most disinvested and low income areas of the city, among them anyway. So I think it's very important that we be looking at it from these standpoints of social equity and land use planning, as well as service delivery. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor, and I think your points are well taken. We did have a long conversation really about the equity issue and how do we look at managing this issue, and as we all like to talk about it, and sort of realizing that this area downtown is certainly impacted, but we also are seeing the issues really citywide, and in particular in the southeast part of the city, which brings me to our next conversation, which is the Loveless Facility. We are, as I said at our last HEC meeting, we have an appraisal that we have undertaken of the Loveless Facility to determine the infrastructure, et cetera, and the condition, and then obviously to look at a potential purchase price or potential purchase, if you will, of that facility. We spent a lot of time in our committee doing the Google Earth thing and checking out the buildings from a very obviously high visual, but talking about the number of facilities that are out there and the fact that this is a major facility with a lot of already built infrastructure that could certainly be a very, very important, if you will, cornerstone to a service system. And that would include the fact that there are already providers there as well. Some providers providing some services, and a lot of those providers, believe it or not, are providers that are funded with state dollars and providing some level of behavioral health services, et cetera. So that's the other facility or site that we're looking at. We are certainly in active conversations with the state about potentially partnering with them for this facility, to use this facility. As you all know, as we talked about before, it was a facility that we had almost a $6 million investment as it relates to COVID-19 as a potential overflow facility for health services. At this point, the good news is that it hasn't been used for that. But the also even better news is that if we are able to work a financial arrangement with as a group, if you will, all of us collectively, I think it'd be a good investment for us to look at as it relates to providing level of services there. And obviously because of its size, a potentially much bigger facility, but also because of the ability to have more services there, really create, I think, what Councilor Davis once said to me, a healthcare complex or campus, if you will, that could have more than just simply a shelter, but more coordinated outreach services, better ability for us to coordinate with the state, the veterans hospitals across the street. So a lot of good synergy as it relates to those services. The mayor will be asking the council, just so all of you know, there'll be we're going to put in up to a $5 million placeholder in the budget to have a conversation with the council as we move to our FY21 budget to look at potential, if that building seems to be the right fit, potentially looking for investment in securing purchasing of that facility as we move forward through our conversations. But nonetheless, the facilities committee looked at that. I would offer all of you, the communities facility committee would like to take a tour of the building or of the buildings at Loveless. And so I'd offer that to all of you on the council. If any of you want to go with us, we will set up a date here very shortly to get a tour so that you all get a sense of what's out there. Look, it's an old hospital. It's got a lot of infrastructure, infrastructure that I think could be useful, not just for homeless services, but quite frankly, for behavioral health services, for veterans outreach services, potentially even creating opportunities for housing on an interim basis because of the size of the property. So I think it's an opportunity that really presents itself well, and I don't know if I know that Councilor Davis, if you have any thoughts about that, certainly would like to hear your thoughts about it.
Thanks, Lawrence. No, I think you captured it well. I know you and I have talked about this a lot, and we're in the right process. In the interest of time for everybody, I think you've done that well, and I just look forward to that conversation. So thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Benton, any thoughts at all on that particular aspect of this?
Well, you know, one thing that's remarkable, you look at that facility from the air, it has massive parking lots. I mean, if we, you know, there's just a lot of real estate there. And as you say, Lawrence, the infrastructure is going to be pretty good. You know, the feds put in some improvements as well. And of course, basic heating, ventilating, air conditioning infrastructure in hospitals is usually pretty robust. So it may have to be modified, obviously, depending on the use. But there's so much potential there. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor. I know that I don't know if Tom was on the line, but I know that he was interested, obviously, in going to see that. And also, let me just say, Commissioner O'Malley also expressed some real interest in going to see it. So that's where we are as it relates to it was our first meeting. So we did a lot of just overall conversations about the state of the situation as we see it and looking at the opportunities. But anyway, any other thoughts from any of the on any other committees from the council? Okay.
Lawrence, this is Julie.
Go ahead,
Hi. I was just kind of piggybacking on my comment regarding the, involving the community, and I do have a lot of concerns that, we need to keep in mind people that live there in those communities or that have businesses in those communities that, you all entertain, putting them on some of those committees. And I'm not sure how you're going to do that, but I mean, I just, I really, truly, I mean, I don't know, I guess I can't emphasize it enough. They're the ones that live there. They're the ones that have businesses in those areas. And I think that we really need to make sure that we include them in the discussions somehow, however you all see fit.
Thanks, Julie. And let me just say that, again, early on, we talked about this at the beginning. All the committees are going to, obviously are open under the Open Meetings Act and are going to be available for community input, et cetera, as we move forward. There is a interest on all of our part to ensure that we have the neighborhoods and the communities that are impacted involved as it relates to understanding each of the committees and the committee work, et cetera. We know we do have neighborhoods involved in some of the committees already.
Yes.
And let me have Carol describe that a little bit, and then.
May I borrow that? Thank you, Chairman Lawrence, Rael. For the homeless service system, the one that is co-chaired by Quinn, Commissioner Piscotti, and Rodney McNeese, there are neighborhood representatives there from the Wells Park, the greater Wells Park area, the near North Valley, and Martineztown, as well as neighborhood members from near the Gibson Medical Center area. So point definitely well made that it's important to hear the neighborhood voice in these discussions.
And we will reach out, as we move forward, Julie and members of the council to look at other ways where we can include them in all the other committees. And so we'll hopefully report out to you at the next council meeting how we've done that.
Okay, thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, Carol.
Okay. Let me then say that I think we have reached, we have a handout on the coordinating council that I think all of you have gotten. It's the council, it's just the makeup of the committees, etc. So you have a full set of the membership of each of the committees. And as we add those, we'll update that list for you so that everybody stays current. Our next item of discussion is the op-ed piece that I think Commissioner Piscotti had asked that we put together. And so I'm going to have Carol talk a little bit about that, and then we'll have a conversation.
Thank you, Chairman Rael. Yes, upon Commissioner Piscotti's insight that to let the community know more about what is this Homeless Coordinating Council about, really the movers and shakers on this really was the county team that put together a wonderful draft that got us going. And then we worked with UNM, and really want to thank Chamisa and Cinnamon, who were really helpful in getting that comms lens in there, and then with me representing the city. So what you have before you is a proposed op-ed that meets the limitations of the journal. I want to say 460 words, but Cinnamon was very tuned into that. So we had to really shape that. I think where what we want to recommend is the signers for this would be President Stokes as well as the elected officials. And I think that's a little bit of a change of when the committee, if you will, the op-ed committee discussed, but that's what I think we would recommend for discussion and consideration of the council members.
Yeah, and let me just add that the mayor was really interested in showing that the elected officials, the heads of each of the respective governance structures here that are involved in the council, really are all collectively working together to deal with this issue. And I think it sends a good message to the community that we have a council that we're all in a partnership with each other. And so I think that's why we have made the recommendation, or making the recommendation, that the elected sign it collectively, so that everyone can see that there is a strong world of support here. So I open it up for all of you for thoughts. Madam President?
I guess I need to see, I haven't seen the most recent version of the op-ed. So if someone could share that with me, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get that over to you. All right. Anybody else have any thoughts? Any other members?
Yeah, Lawrence, if I could just quickly, last time I think I spoke out against having the politicos pile out in the front of this thing. But I think, but on further consideration, I think you're right. It shows a real united front to have the electeds on this, and President Stokes, I think, is obviously the best, or seemingly the absolute best representative from the university on it. So I support this that makeup as far as signatories of the thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. So what we'll do is, I think it may or may not have been sent out, but it will send it out again. If you all can look through that. I think one of the things I would caution all of you as my friends is that all of us can get into a lot of wordsmithing. So just look at it, let us know what your thoughts are, and we'll try and accommodate everybody's perspective. But I do think that it's an important document that would show some great support. Carol?
Thank you. I wanted to just add the spirit that the committee really drafted this and crafted it was to really illustrate that a lot has gone on among all of our organizations. It's not like this is all new, but we wanted to share many of our partnerships that have already in existence and our enthusiasm as well for the Homeless Coordinating Council.
Okay, great. So we'll get that all out to you. That sort of wraps up our discussion items. Any other thoughts, any other issues? So let me just say one last piece. Interestingly enough, as life would have it, during these challenging times with COVID-19, I wanted to just iterate to all of you that the mayor is caught in one of those classic places as a parent, and as the mayor of the city, his son has basically is learning from home, as all of our children are, and there is a particular time that his instructors. Now, keep in mind that Jack, his son, is what I'm going to say 5.
Yeah.
And so Dad has the parental duties of sitting with him during, unfortunately, again, out of his control. This is the APS world we live in. Anyway, the point I'm going to make is that his ability to be here at every one of these meetings is a bit in question, and I want to make sure you all knew that. It's not that he didn't want to be here, and he obviously wants to be here, but from time to time he may not be able to make it because of his parental duties. So, having said all of that, we know that he is tuning in and knows what's going on, but yeah, it was something that was not necessarily in his control. So I just wanted to make sure all of you knew that that's one of the challenges of our modern communications and as it relates in the world that we live in with COVID-19. But he wanted me just to express his regrets for not being able to be here today, and we'll try and see if we can help the schedule by providing him an opportunity to join us some point going forward. So with that being said, thank you all for taking the time today. And there'll be a lot more discussion, I'm sure, between our meetings. We'll have more and more conversations. I would just ask all of you, as all of us are members of this community, and we all want to work together to do the best thing for our citizens. As these issues come up, your staff here, which is Carol and her staff at Family and Community Services, are available to have conversations with all of you and to provide information and additional thoughts, etc., as it relates to how we move forward in the next few months. But please use them and make it, and they'll be available to talk to all of you. So with that being said, I think we're adjourned. Thank you all for joining us.